Now we're up to Shireen. So Shireen, how do you pronounce your last name? Santosham is here. She is the Chief Innovation Officer for San Jose, who works in Marilyn Pardo's office. We had her over here to speak at the NAC a little over a year ago when she started. I think it was just over.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was February of last
year. Yeah, it's February of last year. It was right around when she kind of knew, and her messages are great. She's here to talk to us about autonomous vehicles, the RFI that just went out, smart cities, and anything else that she can share with us. We have some questions, hopefully, that you guys might have. I grabbed this tweet off of your Twitter feed. Someone mentioned something about AVs. AVs have the potential to reclaim parking lots for green space and make cities more walkable for people. Again, back to people focus, not car focus. How can we do that?
And thank you, Kirk, for inviting me. It's nice to be back here. So this is one of the first meetings that I came and presented, and it was February of last year, and I joined in January. So I was only about a month into my job and had lots of ideas and not necessarily a lot accomplished at that point, and so I was really enjoyed speaking with everyone because you were so welcoming and had such great ideas back to discuss with me. So I'm going to spend some time talking about autonomous vehicles, but I'm going to start out with just a little bit of a recap of the last year and a half. For those of you, maybe some of you were here last year, most of you were probably not. So my role, Marilyn Pardo hired me last year to help him think through how do we make San Jose essentially a really innovative place to live and work. And so the first thing that we did, and this was actually after I met with you, is that the mayor and I developed a smart city vision for the city that was really focused on 5 key areas. So building a smart city that is safe, that's inclusive, that's user-friendly for residents, that's sustainable, and to be a leader in demonstration projects. So we are, in Silicon Valley, yet when you walk into City Hall, it feels like you're walking back in time. And so, we should really live up to that name. And this is about using data and tools and evidence to drive that vision and partnering better with the private sector. And this Smart City Vision is online, so happy to share a link. It's pretty high level, but what it did is when we passed this through City Council in March, it had a unanimous vote, and it allowed us to have a mandate to start really working on this agenda in earnest. And most importantly, what it did is it allowed us to create a permanent city department led by a new deputy city manager named Kip Harkness. Some of you may have met him, but he had worked at the city, then he went to PayPal, then he came back in. And so we're able to create a whole office, and he's recruited a great team, folks from Amazon, folks who have a lot of bench strength, engineers, trained at Stanford, really, really top tier people. And that's really started to change the culture internally. And most importantly is that it's a permanent, those are permanent roles. So me, I'm attached to the mayor. When mayor goes out of office, I go, right? And so there's always this sense of will these initiatives last, or are they just flash in the pan? And so I'm glad that we were able to instill that. And then we also created a new council committee. So there's not that many permanent council committees, but we created one around smart cities and technology, and that's actually chaired by Councilmember Jones. So we're really grateful for his leadership on that committee and driving this agenda. So I'm not sure if you can read this. It's probably
goodness.
Yeah, but this was basically So this was my attempt to. I went back through my documents and found the presentation that I gave in February 2016. And I think some things that happen, sometimes what happens is people don't really report out on what they promised to do. And so this is the list of things that I said I was going to focus on and that my team would do. And I'm happy to report that we really did accomplish all of those things on the list, except for the last one, which is closing the skills gap for youth in San Jose, which was probably too ambitious of a goal to meet in a year. But I'm going to go through, some of the things that we've done first is adopt that smart city vision unanimously through our council. The second is passing an open data policy. So we have now all of the city's data open by default and available in one portal. And so we're continuing to evolve that platform, but that adds a level of transparency to the city that didn't exist before. I talked about building this permanent office of innovation. We launched this committee that is chaired by Councilmember Jones. Another thing we're doing is we're launching a new reporting app. So I'll talk a little bit more about it, but that's instead of the Clean San Jose app for graffiti, we now are launching a new app that has a whole suite of services to engage residents. We've also recruited a whole bunch of talented individuals. So in addition to that permanent office, we have many fellows that we've been able to either get philanthropic funding for or other funding to help us get really high talent individuals. So for example, on my team, I'm hiring a Harvard Business School fellow, so it's a graduate that is just leaving Harvard Business School, will come work in our office for 1 year, and we get him, basically Harvard Business School pays half the salary, the city pays half the salary. A really high talented kid who he's from South Bay, worked for Marissa Meyer, is also a consultant, and will be here. So it's exciting to have that kind of talent come in. We're also doing a lot of work around broadband and digital inclusion, and so we have several projects around getting digital access, and I'll talk more about that. And we're doing that both here locally, but also working at the state level and at the national level. So Mayor Ricardo was appointed to the FCC Broadband Deployment Advisory Committee, and he was basically we were the only big city representative appointed at first. They've added a few more, but that's a way for us to shape national policy around broadband. We'll talk about launching the autonomous vehicle effort today, and we've raised substantial philanthropic dollars. So we have partnership with Bloomberg Philanthropy, so Mayor Bloomberg, as well as with the Metro Lab Network and several other organizations. And we also received a substantial grant from Sprint to help with digital access for low-income kids. So all of that, so within the last 14 months, we have sort of raised the profile of San Jose on the national level, and we were awarded top 10 most innovative cities in the country by Governing Magazine, which is sort of the standard for local government in the country. So the first thing I want to talk about is this My San Jose app. So this actually is not formally launching until October, but if you are interested in playing around with it and using it, it is live and you can download it in the App Store. And so in addition to graffiti, we also have potholes, abandoned vehicles, I think outed lights, and a few other things that you could report directly. And if you go through the app, it will automatically go into the workflow for the city. So there's no, it's really seamless. It's much quicker than having to call. So I'd really encourage you to download this. It's available in both Android as well as iOS. So I think this is a good way to engage. And over time, we'll start adding additional modules to this. So we have more than we used to have, which was just graffiti, but we're hoping that over time this can be a platform for not only just you reporting to the city, but also ways for you to engage with each other. So if there are ways for neighborhoods to organize to do their own cleanups, so you're not waiting on the city, I think that's a really exciting option as well.
Excuse me. Are these home built, or are they sort of purchased from the company?
It was a little bit of both. So it was important to us. So many of the products that other cities use have a nice user interface, but they're not integrated in the back to workflow. So we actually had a project manager, Chris Mills, who's great, who was seconded from our DOT IT department, who came in and did the back-end project management with all the teams. And then we used Oracle, and then we built the front end ourselves. So yeah, it was a little bit of a hybrid.
The city of Santa Clara has an app like that, and it's integrated into the workflow. But I never get updates like when things move in the city.
Oh, really? So this actually has a tracking. It has a tracking sorry, it has I guess I don't have all the screenshots here, but it has a way you can follow your requests to see where the status is. And you can actually not just follow your own requests, you can follow requests of other people. So you can see if people have double, more than one person's reported it, you can do that as well. You got it?
Are the requests anonymous?
No, you have to put in your
So somebody
user.
could see you put the request in? Like I call in about my neighbor has a barking dog, my neighbor could find out that I want to call it in?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, yeah.
I'm not using that thing.
We don't have barking dogs on
I'm not using it.
We have like a need use.
I think actually, I will correct myself. I think you can go in as a guest or identify yourself, but there's a little
Well,
more
it has to be
limitations.
anonymous, otherwise, yeah.
Just use curse phone.
Yeah. Because in fact, we want to make sure that people have legitimate requests, right? So-
Well, it's legitimate, I just don't want my neighbor to know that I just don't want my neighbor to know that
You're the one.
I'm turning him in,
Yeah.
It's legitimate, but, yeah, so.
So he's downloading it, so is it available in October or is it available now?
No, it's available now, so you can use it. We're just doing the formal launch, but we're still working out a few bugs in it, so we're still doing user testing on it, but it's stable enough that folks can start using it now.
So you just download it?
Yeah.
Great.
Go to App Store.
You get registered. With a high-tech team.
So another big initiative that we have internally is trying to build a more data-driven city hall, right? So how do you make decisions that are based on data and not based
You
on
might want to get a more recent PC than 1950.
yeah, so I just have a couple of examples of what we've done. So one is we're introducing more performance dashboards and traditional business, culture into City Hall. We know that permitting and development services is a pain point, and so the mayor had pulled together when I first joined an ad hoc committee on development services, and so with that, every month we have the next meeting tomorrow. The development services team has to come and present an electronic dashboard of how their permitting process is going, and we spend a lot of time talking about process improvements to streamline how they work. And so, for example, one process improvement was around, it takes, many of our restaurants have a hard time opening, and it takes a long time, and they're small businesses, and so that can be a challenge. And so we piloted a program to basically help create a single point of contact to help take those small businesses through the process. And that resulted in reducing average times to get a permit for those businesses from 4 to 6 months to 1 month. So really substantial changes. And so now we're at the point where we're scaling it. Another fun way that we use data is around behavioral insights. So through our partnership with Bloomberg Philanthropies, they train some of our staff in what's called sort of nudge behavior. So where you change sort of wording or small things to nudge people in certain directions, right? And that can have a big impact on how they behave. So for example, we have this issue with illegal dumping in the city and big bulky items, around. And the city actually offers free item bulky pickup, but people weren't using it, and we didn't know why. And so what they did is they tested 2 postcards. One postcard said, "Do the right thing, get your items picked up." The other one said, "You're so special, you've been chosen to get free items picked up." And the one that had "You're so special" actually showed a 150% increase in use of the service. And so, these kinds of small things show big impacts, and training our staff on how to utilize the tools is exciting.
That's
That
cool.
would be excellent,
Right.
because what I found lacking with the city is its
You've been chosen for increased
emails or
Keats is
daily
20% more delicious.
meetings, announcements, and notifications, like the development thing, the EIR.
Yeah,
It is not very
Yeah.
well done.
yeah, it doesn't feel transparent, doesn't feel user
If you could
friendly.
improve that even by 10%,
Yeah,
you get much more public opinion.
yes, yeah, I agree. a good point. So this one, so another big initiative, this is going to sound a little bit more abstract, it's a little bit broader, but is our broadband and digital inclusion work. So there's about 95,000 residents in San Jose that don't have internet access. And you know, for children in our schools, if you don't have internet access at home, you can't do your homework. And as you probably all know from your children, you know, homework is getting more and more digital, learning is getting more digital. And so if you think about inequality, if you think about opportunities for young people, if we don't solve that problem, there's going to be a big issue. And the other big group actually that's left out is seniors. So there's a lot of isolation that happens amongst the senior community if you don't have digital access and that connection. And so, you know, this kind of shows where those gaps are. So if you have an income of over $75,000 in San Jose, most people will have internet access. Only 4% don't. But if you make less than $20,000 a year as a household, you have a 40% chance of not having internet access. And this is California-wide. But unfortunately, almost a fifth of our households make less than $20,000 a year. So this is not an insignificant problem for the city. And you know, we are concerned that we're in the middle of Silicon Valley and we shouldn't be leaving people out and leaving behind folks. And then, you know, for the rest of us, I think the other question is, if you have access, are you getting what you pay for in terms of speed and quality? And so we launched a crowdsourcing application called Speed Up San Jose. It was super cheap. I think it was maybe $5,000 for us to do this. And it was essentially a speed test. And so we launched this in the city in about 2 weeks. We had over 3,000 people test across the city, and it showed where there were real gaps, right, around the city in speed and quality. And we cross-tab that essentially with a bunch of data from the National Broadband Map and other data sources. And what we found is that, you know, less than 1% of San Jose premises have access to fiber, right? We have, you know, really kind of low speeds, and we are, relative to our size, we are very poorly ranked for broadband. So, you know, what we're doing right now, and we're kind of in the middle of this effort, is we've engaged PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is a reputable consulting firm, to help us do a digital infrastructure and broadband assessment. So as a city, we can assess our current digital assets and really coordinate investment from the private sector into broadband, and so we can increase that quality and pricing for our residents, as well as really close that digital divide. So, you know, we've engaged PwC, we did the Speed Up San Jose crowdsourcing option. We're actually, you know, with these populations that are left out, we can't reach them through these tools, so we're actually raised money from the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, from Comcast, from TechCU, to actually go out and work with a nonprofit called Citizens Insights, together with a professor from Stanford, and we are actually doing street surveys to go ask people what's holding them up from getting access. And there's some really interesting insights. We don't have the final results; they'll be out probably in a couple of months. But the early results show things like the sign-up process is in itself a barrier, because if you don't have ID or you don't have credit, you can't actually get access. And so it will be very interesting to think about how we intervene there. It also shows, by the way, that our public libraries and our community centers are incredibly important for that population. And so investing in them, making sure, you know, can we do more checkout devices and hotspot checkouts at libraries to help kids. So I think there's some interesting ways we can solve this challenge, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And then we're also doing engagement with corporations and nonprofits together with the city, and we're doing these focus groups to really think about how do we solve this problem. And then, as I mentioned, we had the mayor appointed to the FCC Advisory Board, which is a very big deal on the national level around broadband issues. And then finally, we were awarded this grant from Sprint, and it's nearly 10,000 low-income high school students in San Jose will get free internet access for 4 years of high school, plus devices. And so that is like a very generous award from Sprint. I think roughly it's over $20 million of services that will go to those kids. So really exciting to get that for our kids. So the reason why I was invited here today is really to talk about this other initiative, which is autonomous vehicles. And so, you know, before I get into exactly what we're doing, I just wanted to frame why we are.
Not really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
So, an additional 470,000 residents by the year 2040.
And that's just, is that San Jose
That's
specifically?
San Jose specifically. That's the estimate. And, you know, we think traffic is bad now. And if everyone comes in and wants to drive single occupancy vehicle, this is just not a manageable situation, no matter how you look at it. Something has to change, and it can't be small changes. It has to be something dramatic. And so, you know, autonomous vehicles are, you know, on the horizon. They're coming. In some ways, they're here today, and the way that your modern vehicles operate. But some of the benefits that people don't realize, I think this is automatically going forward, so I'll just have to click back. Some of the benefits that people don't realize about autonomous vehicles is, you know, when you have autonomous vehicles, you don't need things like parking lots as much because, you know, you can park them in more central locations, you reclaim that space. And so this is an illustration from a professor in Minnesota that shows what could happen in an area if you took the parking lot back and made it a park, and what that would do to sort of public life in the city, especially as things get more crowded. You know, people are going to want more green space. Similarly, you're not going to need such big highways, right? And highways tend to divide communities because, you know, they're very hard to cross, and, you know, so in many cities around the United States, you'll see highways being the dividing line, and I think that's also true in San Jose. But you can reclaim whole lanes, right, and have things be much more connected. And so I think that's a really exciting opportunity for our city to change the way it looks and feels. So what are we doing right now? You know, we were thinking about how to get into the autonomous vehicle space. We're very concerned around, you know, making sure that whatever we do is really driving and is beneficial to the city in the long term and to the residents here, right? And so, you know, we have a couple of guiding principles that we decided were really important if we were going to work with the private sector on autonomous vehicles. And so the first is safety. You know, so we have a Vision Zero plan, and we really want to eliminate all traffic fatalities. And so when we deploy these, we want to really make sure they're safe. The second is around equity, and that may not be intuitive, but as you see, you know, private companies come in, whenever they take over a public transportation system, always the routes that are not profitable, that may be in less dense areas or for low-income populations, they always start to get cut, right? And so for us, when we transition to a whole new transportation system, we need to make sure that that's equitable as we move forward. The third is sustainability, right? Like we really, you know, what the worst outcome it would be to have a bunch of autonomous vehicles that are single occupancy.
Or zero occupancy.
Or zero, well, exactly, because then people will just like send them around, and that would be a much worse traffic situation than even the steady state. So, you know, trying to think about how do we incentivize people to take shared vehicles, take more public transport. Those changes will have to start to happen as we grow, because, you know, that's what happens in every sort of large city. And then, you know, the last one is this quality of life issue, right? So making sure that we're thinking about autonomous vehicles as a way to create this more livable and walkable city.
How much is VTA participating in that? If at all?
Yeah, they are. So actually the picture on the left is what we did is before we sort of dove straight in. We had a couple of roundtables with industry and our partners, so including VTA, to really talk through like what is the best way to think about this partnership. And so we had, I think, about 20 autonomous vehicle companies show up for each. We had 2 of them, and VTA, and Mineta Transportation Institute, and some other academic partners to help us think through our approach.
So, I mean, isn't the private industry going to drive, like Uber, going to drive this literally? And when it comes to some of these topics, the city's going to try to impose their will on Uber to do all these things? I mean, is that, I don't know, you're going to have a permit to be able to, Uber's going to be able to drive in the city of San Jose?
So so taking a step back, I mean, this is a request for information for demonstration projects. These are small pilot projects. These are not kind of at scale. Our philosophy in the city is that we don't want to create another layer of regulation within the city. So the state and the national regulatory bodies are already going down that path, and we don't necessarily want to create what's referred to as a patchwork of regulation, so additional hurdles. So what we're trying to do is really look for partners who will work with us to deploy these vehicles in a way that works for the city. And we're taking a more partnership-based approach. And there is actually a lot of interest in that approach because of the backlash that has happened against some companies that go forward and don't actually engage the public and don't work with the city. And so there is an interest from the companies to work together with us to make that an easier process. So we, in the RFI, we laid out, one of the things companies asked us for was like, they actually wanted to know where in the city we want to test. And so these are not binding areas, these are just suggestions to them. They can come back and say, we want to test in a totally different area. But, we thought about areas that we could test different kinds of problems that we have. So one is this airport to Diridon connection. There's no real connection there right now. You just need to take a taxi if you fly in. And so we thought, well, why don't we see if there's a way to cheaply test autonomous vehicles, and that's maybe potentially a much lower cost than trying to do some sort of train or something else. The second is, this area, downtown to Stevens Creek, and high traffic corridor. This is what I would say is also connecting people to jobs. So all the businesses here, and one question is, how do you move people from where they live to where jobs are? And so that's kind of the hypothesis around why we picked that area. The third is the Transportation Innovation Zone, which is about a mile square area up in North San Jose, which is an area that has all different types of transportation. So it has like intersections, there's lots of pedestrians, there's buses, there's VTA lines, and so it's envisioned as a place where next generation technology can be tested. And so we proposed that area, and potentially in the long term there'd be sort of connected vehicle infrastructure up there as well for them to test on. Another one is this idea of, solving problems and providing public benefit. So creating a link for homeless veterans who are in emergency housing to the light rail station. So that is, I believe it's a connection that is going away from the VTA. So this is could be a replacement for those folks to actually have access to public transport. And then the last is sort of just saying downtown San Jose, use the city as a platform to potentially, test where you want. So the timing on this is we've essentially put out the document and call for proposals, and then they're going to come back to us. Tomorrow we're going to have a conference where they can ask questions, and then by September we'll get the proposals in and start to make decisions about who we want to partner in with. And this is a grand experiment. We'll see how many proposals we get, and maybe lots of people want to work with us, maybe they don't, but so far the interest has been high, so we're optimistic. And so, I think one question is, why is what we're doing different? We certainly are not the first city to deploy autonomous vehicles, but we're hoping to be the first city that does it right. And I think it's different because we really want to focus on safety, and we also want to focus on core challenges that meet public needs. I think a lot of what's happened, like for example in Pittsburgh, is the mayor there said, let's roll out the red carpet, not the red tape, right? And didn't actually ask much of the companies when they were coming in. And then that resulted now in a fair amount of concern from the public. And so we're trying to say, let's have a process by which we set out what we want and for our residents early, so that we are managing the process better. And I think this early engagement with corporations really helps. So, having conversations with them to understand really what they're trying to accomplish versus just doing things in a vacuum. The third thing is, one of the challenges, this is sort of a technical challenge, is this idea of data sharing. So many of the companies don't want to share, historically have not wanted to share data, but we need data for transportation planning. So for example, taxis will provide pick-up and drop-off point data, but some of these newer companies don't provide that data. And so we are really saying we would like that data, and we will offer up data from the city. So we have our open data policy that we passed last year, and so we're going to give them information on our traffic signals and other traffic data that we have. So it's a shared conversation. We also are helping them understand where there's different infrastructure that could be useful to them. So things like EV charging stations, if we really want to incentivize electric use, then we need to sort of help make sure that those supporting infrastructure is there. And then the last is as you can tell, we're thinking a lot about talent and resources. So we hired a single point of contact to be an innovation manager within our Department of Transportation, and we hired her from Google Maps, and so she's quite familiar with autonomous vehicles and the mapping issues that happen. And so, I think it's exciting that we're one of the only cities, I think, in America that's really leaning forward in that space. Yeah.
So, what I'm hearing is we're going to take everything you're talking about that's still remaining on the surface streets of the city, and we are probably going to be years and years away from ever developing a real transportation system in the city of San Jose. And BTA refuses to go underground for the reason that they keep talking about is economic. So is there a feeling within the city government that this is actually a feasible thing to do, that's going to work for the community better than what, we don't have a good transportation system now. Is this supposedly going to solve this whole problem?
Well, I think tackling the entire transportation system is a daunting challenge. What I would say is that you're right. I really agree with the point around making sure that our system works together. So our public transport, with what's happening on our streets, with what's happening with shared vehicles and TNCs, all of that working together is very important. This is one small piece of testing. I mean, these are pretty small scale deployments at this point of testing new technology because we know we're going to need it. We want to get ahead of the curve, and I think how the system evolves is really an important question. And this is, these technologies will revolutionize how that system evolves, and so it will integrate with that system. And we are working closely with BTA, and they're fully aware of everything we're doing, and we're in conversation with them about any pilots they're doing as well. So, we're hopeful. It's a grand challenge for sure.
Yeah, this Mike San Jose app that you're putting up, what's that going to do to Clean San Jose app? Is the Clean San Jose app going to go away?
Yeah, it'll probably phase out.
Probably or will. Then who administers the Clean San Jose app and who's going to administer your app? And we're sitting here talking that we have the cooperate, but I know that the Clean San Jose app, they had an election in November, and whoever ran that app never changed the county or the council members until about February or March, because some citizens asked, and everybody wiped their hands. It was somebody else. In fact, on San Jose Clean today, you'll find one of the council members' term of office is not correct, but you don't know where to go and get it corrected.
Yeah, so it wasn't administered by the city, so it was administered, I believe, by the vendor who was doing the cleanup of the graffiti. So now that same vendor is working with San Jose, the app that we have, My San Jose, but we will administer the app itself.
Is this the administration, is that through graffiti, or is it the technical part of it being serviced out by a vendor?
No, so we will run the technical part of the interface and routing and workflow, so that all is housed within the city. We subcontract to certain groups for graffiti cleanup. And so that subcontracting group will still remain. It's the same one on the back end that was with.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm talking about is just the app itself. If the app is not correct, how can the public talk to somebody to get the application correct, not all the other stuff now?
So with the new app that we have, there is a way to give feedback and contact.
Now,
That old app will go away.
the other app will go away, which will save us money, or are our stakeholders paying for both apps?
No, they're not paying for both. Yeah, the old app will go away.
Do you have a time frame?
Yeah, October.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can't wait until autonomous vehicles get here. I wish they were here today. Do you have a sense, just as listening, if we've got 100 cars today, give me a ballpark of what's the guesstimate of the quote-unquote experts are thinking the amount of vehicles will be around in like 20 years. In other words, obviously, there's my vehicle sitting out here, wasting its time just rotting. It could be out driving around and servicing people, so we'll need less vehicles. And I'm just wondering, is there some kind of a sense of how many vehicles, if there's 100 vehicles today, will there be 50 vehicles running around? Half the amount of vehicles, or?
I think that's a really big question around whether we get these regulations and incentives right for consumers, right? So to get people from being really used to being in a single occupancy vehicle to getting used to ride sharing, for younger people who have lived in urban environments their whole life, it might not be such a shift, but for other folks, it's going to be.
Well, in 20 years, I think we'll all be switched over. I'm just trying to get an idea of,
The number?
If you don't know, you don't know. You can say that. I'm not going to, look down if you don't know. Just.
Well, I don't think anyone knows. I guess my point is I don't think anyone knows.
Well, we don't know because it's not 20 years. Did experts come out with any kind of guesstimates or anything like that?
Well, what the experts say, and Kirk can probably jump into, is that it depends on if you are able to regulate and incentivize shared occupancy vehicles. So if it becomes more shared and people don't own cars, but they basically rent them, then there's a lot less vehicles. If the regulation and the incentives don't go in that direction, then you're going to see something different. And so, who knows?
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
In your talks, when you're doing the RFIs, and you have BTA there, is Caltrans there too, or no?
Caltrans or Caltrans?
Caltrains.
What's
And
Caltrans?
I was just wondering,
Caltrains is aware of what we're doing. I can't remember if they came. I don't think they came.
well, if anything was going to be automated, you would think that the easiest one would be a train, right? It's on a track, it's not really going to go anywhere. You just got to make sure you don't hit anything. I'm not sure I have a problem with that. Well, I get we're hitting them with people driving too. So,
can I make a recommendation on your pilot?
Yeah.
to include some type of seniors, whether it's like around the senior center here, just as an experiment, just getting people to a meeting or something like that, or dealing with seniors, because then you're going to get very good feedback from the cars. And
I remember we had looked at one corridor here in Willow Glen about getting seniors to a medical facility, but I think for some reason it wasn't an easy route to do. But I think it's a really good point, because I think one of the best benefits is to seniors.
Yeah, I mean, like the Villages is one area that's highly senior. There's mobile parks that are senior or elderly people, and
yeah, it's a great idea. And this is the first stage, and it's a start. But if this is successful, we'll start to do more and expand them. So that's probably where.
The reason why I'm saying senior district references, if you have a lot of kids that say, hey, I gotta get to a particular time, if you gotta go to a doctor's appointment, that's one thing. But I'm saying if you gotta go to a job at a particular time and the traffic is there and that thing, as opposed to a senior saying, okay, I just gotta get there, and they usually allow that time to be at a doctor's office or that thing. So there's not quite the pressure that you would be putting on the vehicle. With seniors. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Great idea.
So how much money do you have for this?
For autonomous vehicles?
Yeah, and are you going to be putting sensors all over the place to look at, traffic speeds and
So
congestion
right now, we have no money for this effort. I mean, these are private corporations, and we're expecting them to, if they're good partners, to work with us, and we provide staff time and support and some of the things we talked about. But the expectation is that they're going to provide that. Any sort of money would be provided by them. On the sensor side, this is a big conversation around how do we think about deploying sensors. Right now, this pilot is strictly on the vehicles themselves, but there are many companies that are interested in the sensor part and talking to the vehicles, and so we are right now thinking through that as once we get through this, that might be the second phase, is to look at sensor pilots.
Okay, and then the other question was, one of the bottlenecks is the parking at transit hubs.
Mm-hmm.
So like at Caltrain, Mountain View, the ridership has gone way up, and when they electrify, it's going to be nuts, but they don't have nearly enough parking. So the autonomous vehicles will help that. And is the city looking at pick-up and drop-off locations for autonomous vehicles to be able to do that last mile problem where people don't have to leave the car at the train station?
Yeah, so that's a little bit, I think, the Diridon Airport test is a little bit of that, understanding of how you can drop off at the train station and then go back to the airport. So those are transit hubs.
But this is people getting from their homes to the train
Yeah,
station.
what you're talking about is a different problem, but for these pilots, we're not looking at that. An interesting use case for that is actually Miami. So they have that issue, and they're actually doing, what they're doing is working with Uber, not on autonomous vehicles, but Uber and Lyft on just getting people to use shared vehicles or use bikes if they live close by to come through. So there's some interesting experiments there. We are not currently doing that, and I don't work on transportation full time, so there may be things that are happening in the city that I'm unaware of around transportation points, but I'm happy to ask and see. But it's a very good point.
I want to follow up on this gentleman's suggestion. I live in a retirement community, and there are about something over 300 of us that live there. And there's a variety of different transportation modes. There are private automobiles, some people share an automobile. There's a van that parking schedule, and they schedule it 2 days ahead of time. And it will take them anywhere within a 10-mile radius, but it won't wait for them. In other words, they'll drop them off, and they have to schedule, they have to arrange for it to be picked up, right? So I think he's got a good point here, and an almost ideal pilot project would be in a large senior center.
Yeah.
Because and there's a good reason to believe it would be pretty successful if it was done right.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. I think we have to find the right. So part of this too was where, we looked at a longer list of options, and it was also about which, some places didn't want to do an autonomous vehicle pilot, and I think the senior centers, retirement communities might be a good place for us to go.
There's kind of a built-in incentive.
Yeah, I think you're right. Oh.
So I had my question. It's a kind of a two-parter. The first one is, I saw your transportation zone, kind of like a follow-up to what Steve's talking about. Chappie's always talked about this being an innovation corridor, and I saw you use that term, and I don't want to misuse the term if it's an understood vocabulary for what you're using to define that 1 mile square area. But looking at this, looking at Stevens Creek or even down parts of Winchester as an innovation corridor, whether it's sensor technology or autonomous vehicles, how can we advocate? My first question: how can we advocate for that to land here, where we have a lot of challenges here, especially wide roads and everything? The follow-up I would have is I attended a meeting Monday from the Rand and scientist gave in Palo Alto, and she talked about policies being a lot of the challenges that we face right now. Not necessarily, technology is not just a technology to deploy just for the technology. It's what problem you're trying to solve, and she really focused in on the equity of society and serving the people that cannot take care of their own needs effectively, given their financial challenges or no cars or whatever. So looking at that, which I'm really glad to see that that's a priority of yours. I mean, you're focusing on the veteran community, but I hope that it extends to the underserved community in general. I mean, VTA has made some decisions to basically cut services to certain areas because they're consolidating to make better service but for example, one of my guys is losing service, so he will not be able to come to work effectively in the near future when they implement the next generation, whatever it is. And then the other thing that she talked about is how it affects development. And if you have a thought of how, when you're looking at, we're not sure when this is all going to take place or when everything's going to root in terms of when the autonomous vehicle is going to really come in on its own. But in making decisions, if the decision today, looking at the project today, how will it be able to integrate autonomous technologies in the future? And if it can't, that's when she said is a time you really need to rethink that project. And so I bring that up as a lot of this has to do with planning and codes, where you require and you mandate minimum parking requirements for new developments. And if there isn't a plan on how to repurpose that, aren't we selling our future out by mandating things that we wanted 20 years ago because that's what we needed 20 years ago? Yeah. But 20 years from now, we don't even know what we're going to need, but if we're mandating 20-year-old requirements to the future, what is that doing from an expense, affordability, because of the cost of parking and everything else? How can we deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question, and there are probably more well-suited people than me in our planning department as well as in our DOT that could answer that better. I do know what I've heard from them is that they've already started to think about it. So in thinking about how much parking we allocate, they've already started to kind of reduce that for new development. And so I don't have all the details on it, but I know that that's in some of the plans. And then, this autonomous vehicle effort is, it was an idea that came out of our mayor's office, but ultimately is really now driven, as it should be, by our Department of And so with them leading it, they have integrated planning for the transportation system in San Jose, right? So it's not getting done in kind of a vacuum separate from everything else we're doing. And frankly, it's done at, to be honest, it's done at a very high level. So, Kevin O'Connor is the executive sponsor, who's the number 2 person in DOT. And so Jill North, who's the innovation manager, reports in directly to him. So although I don't know all the details, I'm confident that there are very smart people in the city thinking about it.
I'm sure we have talent. Just to follow up on that, I think there's a challenge between what the development community hears and has to deal with versus maybe what strategically we need to do as a community. And so how do those things start to shore up? Because whether it's like the Villar building or any of these other ones that have a mandatory requirement of X amount of parking spaces, stalls per apartment, that may be necessary today, but by the time these get built in 3 to 5 years, that might not even be true. And so what are we doing to allow for that development community to repurpose or adjust or give them incentives or encourage them or require them to have a plan to what happens when we get rid of 50% of your parking? What are you going to do with that space? How are you going to make it affordable for people? Because they're basically building that cost into the apartments. And maybe it's the unbundling is a starting point so that they don't get part of the cost of the apartment.
Yeah. So I know some of the buildings are now not required to have as much parking. That's what my understanding. But I'm not close enough to each of these development projects. I mean, in fact, you probably know more about them than I do.
And I'm not talking about any specific development. I'm just talking as a general approach. How is that kind of shoring up?
I think there's challenges. I mean, the regulatory challenges around it are not just at the city level. So I think some of those requirements are coming from higher levels, either the county or the state. And so I think there are some challenges there that all cities are facing in California that need to be addressed. And I think, one way to address those things is to, is frankly to have groups like yours talk about that, more directly, because it is easier, like for some of these things that are like future oriented, it's sometimes hard to get attention when there's, immediate fires to be fought, right? So the more that groups like yours are saying, hey, we're invested, we really want to make sure that this is done right, the better off we'll be.
So this parking thing, it's been going on for a long, long time, and you just mentioned that people are thinking of having less parking at apartment buildings. But that's been going on, every time I hear about it, there's always more parking requirement. People came along years ago and said, gee, because of the .com, everybody's been working from home, and you're not going to have any traffic problems, so we don't need freeways. So old Jerry Brown before put a freeze on building any more freeways in California. Well, you know how smart that was, right? But he said, oh, because they're going to be .com, we're all going to work from home, we don't need freeways. The guy's got a problem. Number two, we all said, oh, we're not going to be needing a lot of traffic issues because the VTA is coming, and everybody's going to be riding the light rail back and forth to work. Well, did that work?
No.
Did it? Did we all ride the light rail come here today?
No.
Didn't work. Now I'm hearing about the autonomous car is going to eliminate traffic and eliminate parking. It's not going to happen because history has proven it's not going to happen. So if you got your friends down in City Hall thinking it's going to happen, they better go back to some school or look at the history because it's not going to happen.
Well, it's certainly hard to.
It is not going to happen. If they want it to happen and they wish it happens, like working from home on your computer or taking a light rail or taking BART, it's not going to happen. You're going to get 453 more thousand people living here in 22 years. You're going to have 800,000 more cars.
And I certainly agree that how we plan for the future is the biggest issue, and certainly I'm not going to take responsibility for all the mistakes that have been made over the last
So
20
I
years.
say we plan.
Sorry, I want to bring in more people.
We plan, one more thing. We plan for the parking lots, you know, and if we don't need them, we can always put a park there. But don't do it the other way around.
You know, we have lots of vacancies in City Hall.
So, adding on to what this gentleman is saying, and what the others in this room are saying, I feel as though autonomous vehicles are reinventing the wheel. Because we do have the electrification of Caltrain coming in, we do have BART coming in. I won't even comment on the VTA because quite frankly, I built it. But I would really like to see the mayor's department focus more on Vision Zero and infrastructure. If that meant bringing in more urban planners to be in his kitchen cabinet, as it were, because stuff like Winchester Stevens Creek is horrible, versus when I go to Willow Glen with the road diet, it's like, oh, you know, people are actually walking here, people actually want to come here. So honestly, that's what I want to see more than another thing layered on top of an infrastructure that already needs a lot of work.
Yeah, and I think, you know, this is one of the areas where there is a lot of work happening in the areas you're talking about. I mean, my portfolio and initiatives are a small slice of all of the work, you know, that we're small, you know, I'd say maybe 10 people in City Hall out of the 6,000 that are working in all of these other issue areas. So certainly making sure we have good roads and good, being what I'd say, Kip, who's the innovation head for the city, talks about being brilliant at the basics and making sure that we're really delivering services really well for our residents. You know, it's always hard, when you're trying to be innovative, it's always hard because people, there are kind of immediate needs, but in the interest of planning for the future, you still need to carve out some space for innovation, because if you don't, you just won't be ready when the time comes.
So you had a diagram up there where you had Ricardo, and then in the background it said, you know, automated vehicles. Were you at that conference at all? Okay. So what were the two biggest requests or needs or problems on the part, I don't want to say Uber and Lyft, and I don't know who actually were the private industry participants, but what were their issues? What did they need from the city of San Jose in order for this to happen? I mean, I'm looking at in the middle of the night, where are they going to park all their vehicles? You know, when you know, things like that.
I mean, at this point, these are, you know, where they're talking about testing is pretty small, so they don't need a lot of places to park their vehicles. Some of the companies ask for that, so you know, that's why I said we did provide kind of a list of infrastructure that could be useful to them. So it's not that we're giving it to them. We said, here's some infrastructure that potentially could be useful to you. You guys propose to us, you know, what you think you'll need, and then we can have a conversation about, you know, what it would mean for you to use that infrastructure. But I included things like EV charging stations, curbside space. So a lot of them wanted a way to pull up to a curb to pick up people. The parking lot thing was less of a concern. They wanted to know where we wanted. They wanted more guidance from us, because originally we thought we'd just say, you know, propose to us and then we'll pick. But they said, oh, in order to propose to you, we want to know, do you have sort of areas or use cases? And that's why we have those areas and use cases. And then they wanted to know about data. So, you know, the cars, you know, they have all their LiDAR sensors and everything else that pick up a lot of data externally, but the more data that they can get fed into it, you know, the safer the cars will be, because they'll know, you know, let's avoid this area because it's really high traffic and there's lots of density here, so let's go a different route, so the car has less to sort of deal with.
All right, so you focus more on just this prototype testing and not anything long-term in terms of any of the issues.
Yeah, so what we said to them was, what we'd really love is, these are prototypes and small-scale testing, because that's just where the industry is at this point, but we're looking for longer-term partners. So if you propose to us, we would love to see your vision for your pathway to scale, because there is a real chance that with a ton of staples, you can have lots of little tests, and then there's no pathway to longer-term and we would like to, have longer term partners that are here that we can test and learn and sort of show those results to the rest of the country and sort of lead the way in the space.
What companies are actually at this?
Well, there's about 20 companies. I don't have the list in front of me. I think the Business Journal did an article and they had the list. But some of the ones off the top of my head: Uber, Lyft, Waymo, Ford, GM, Zoox, which is a startup. So like almost all the major players were there. Yeah.
Question? How are you looking at partnering with other cities on the pilot? So I assume that not everybody's going to be contained in the San Jose border, and even Stevens Creek here is on a split border. If Stevens Creek is one of your go-to places, which I hope it becomes a priority one for you, how does like Santa Clara in that particular case, or if it's Apple in Cupertino, which might be a great opportunity because it's a nice straight shot down Stevens Creek. How is that? Are they engaged? Are the other mayors is Mayor Gilmore and Mayor, I don't know who the Cupertino mayor is, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, so at this point, because this is our first experiment, we're just trying to minimize the number of elements. I mean, as you can see, it's already complex just between us and BTA and everything, so for this phase, we aren't engaging really beyond the borders. But we can in the future. I mean, we're not creating new regulations or anything like that. So if they create new regulations, they can. But right now, I mean, the cars will just operate under California law, right? And so whatever's legal in California, they can do in any city. So they can continue if they want. But, we're going to focus on
Gotcha. Great.
So how do you allocate to your pilot areas? Do you just say, Ford, you take one pilot area, GM take another, and then we'll evaluate, and if you do good, then you'll be able to go all over the city, or?
No, so what we've done is we've just put out, basically, you can even go online and read it. It's a 30-page document that lays out all of these areas and what's possible, and we've sent that out to the companies. Now we're waiting for those companies to come back and say, this is what we want to do, and they can pick from those lists of what we've given them, or they might propose something that's totally different. We've asked them to say, be creative. So we don't know yet, and we don't know how many we're going to pick or what it's going to look like, but in September, we'll see. But I don't imagine we're going to be like, you get this area, you get this other area. We'll just look at the proposals and say, which are the ones we want to work with.
Is there a way for us to advocate for one area or another? Is there a formal process to do that? If we wanted this to be something we keep knocking on your door, sending a bunch of emails.
Yeah, well, you've been very effective because Chappie asks me about it very often.
Great.
So I think continue to offer it up and making it easier. We're here, right? So I think the companies want to work in places where they're going to get a friendly and welcoming response. It's a much more difficult thing when you're testing new products to work in a neighborhood where people really don't want you there.
Yeah.
So to the extent, that's possible. And and I think certainly as we start to assess which companies, if they ask us, we can always say this neighborhood is really excited.
Would there be ways to kind of think out of the box a little bit? Say you get a commitment from 10 people that say, I'm going to give up my car for the next 6 months to be a part of this. Is that something that you think they would be receptive to, to get people to actually commit, reach their own personal time or resources, or
I think that's a really interesting idea. I think it depends on the pilot. Right now, it depends on what they're testing, if they really need riders or if they just need
space.
Yeah. But I think that's a really interesting idea. So we should continue to talk and see if there are things that, as a neighborhood, could be an interesting thing to offer up.
Well, thank you very much. I have one last slide.